Good morning and good evening. Welcome to this week's Circle of Harmony. Today is our third session on the discussion of death, and we'll see where the conversation goes. But before we plunge in, just taking a few minutes to ingather ourselves, to connect with our breath, to be fully present, available, open, receptive to what we are about to hear, see, discuss, feel, think, so that the being can take it in and it can become me. So invoking Mother and Sri Aurobindo's grace and presence, thank you. So we were
Good evening and good.
good evening, Jatin. Yeah. So before we move on, before we begin actually, anything from last time or anything we came across that we would want to share, reflect on together on, I don't know, anything related to this topic? So we were in the middle of a passage, from the sunlit path. So I'll just pull it up and maybe we can start from there. So according to me, the text in yellow is what we had gone over and we had to go further. Yeah. So if anybody is willing, they can read the whole thing first, what we had covered, and in continuation, the next half, unless they want to stop somewhere, pause somewhere, they can do that. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. In a general way, a life is only one brief episode in a long history of spiritual evolution, okay, in which the soul follows the curve of the line set for the earth, passing through many lives to complete it. I think it went up. Okay. It is an evolution out of material inconscience to consciousness and on towards the divine consciousness. I'll just read that one more time. It is an evolution out of material inconscience to consciousness and on towards the divine consciousness, from ignorance to divine knowledge, from darkness through half lights to light, from death to immortality, from suffering to the divine bliss. Suffering is due first to the ignorance, secondly to the separation of the individual consciousness from the divine consciousness and being, a separation created by the ignorance. When that ceases, when one lives completely in the divine and no more in one's separated smaller self, then only suffering can altogether cease. I'll just read that last sentence one more time. Should I continue on to the next one? Okay.
Please, because this we had discussed, unless anybody has anything on this, we can just take up. This was just for continuity. Yes.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Pranavji, please.
Actually, suffering, is it has something to do with the ego consciousness? Maybe I think some past impressions or conditioning, because so-called suffering is basically, is it related to that? Because what, see, whenever,
Pranavji, can you pull the speaker more further closer to your
yeah,
mouth,
hello.
please? Yeah.
Yes, is it better now?
Yeah, it's slightly better. Yes.
Okay, now what I was trying to say that suffering is a phenomena which is basically will be connected with some, say, past impressions that we carry. That is also because of some identity or some ego we carry with us. Because is it so? Because this is one way to look at it. Because the so-called conditioning, we say conditioning of consciousness is what? That is some impressions we carry. That's why probably we are in a process of evolution, kind of Otherwise, people say no. If the soul is free, it doesn't take a rebirth. It also Indian thought says that you take a rebirth because you have certain old. This one thought process. That old debts you carry. So it's like a debit credit balance bank account. That's it probably. Is it so? And it is. And this is what one way. What do you think about this? Is it correct or is not?
Yeah, Pranavji, it's like, these are such vast topics, and we can just, kind of just see what we can see, right? Having our own perceptions and conceptions and knowing that these are just perceptions and conceptions and they don't have much bearing to the truth as such. Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, so from that regard, if we see that, they say suffering is basically because of the I, because of the doership. The whole Gita is kind of based on that, right? That the doership is the reason, which is the I. So that is considered one of the most thing. And when you said ego, right? Ego is the I. So you said it exactly how it is, and yet it's something that we know. But how much do we see? Like when I'm suffering, am I able to step back and see that what in me is making me go through this? So that is, I think, something that I should focus on, because knowledge in
And
itself,
also attachment. I think also attachment, because see, suffering is connected to relationships also.
yeah. So
Mother,
attachment
wife, or
also
not.
would be I, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So anything to do with I leads to suffering now or later. So that is there. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll just continue reading on them.
I can support you. You have been reading a lot. Okay.
Sure, you can go ahead if you want. Sure.
Because I can read few lines. Yeah. Each soul follows its own line, and these lines meet, journey together for a space, then part to meet again, perhaps hereafter. Often they meet to help each other on the journey in one way or another. As far as for the after that period, the soul passes into other planes of existence, staying there for a while till it reaches its place of rest, where it remains until it is ready for another terrestrial existence. This is the general law. But for the connection of embodied soul with embodied soul, That is a matter of personal evolution on which nothing general can be said. As it is intimate to the soul, stories of the two, and needs of personal knowledge. That is all I can say. But I don't know that it will be of much help to her, as these things are helpful usually only when one enters into the consciousness in which they become not mere ideas but realities. Then one grieves no longer because one has entered into the truth, and the truth brings calm and peace. So this is a long journey, I think. Basically, especially people like us, because if you look at some highly, this is about it here.
Yes, absolutely long. But if we have begun, or if we can begin, I think that is really good. So starting with today, it says, the passage says that each soul follow its own line, and these lines meet, journey together for a space, then part to meet again. Lot of times when we are judging people, or when we are wondering what are they doing, knowing that everybody has their own journey. We know this conceptually, but do we practice this? Have we been able to shed off the judgments, the ill wills, the underlying comments? Because it is their own journey, it is their personal journey. I can't understand. I can't even understand my own self, what I am doing, where I am heading. How can I expect to understand somebody else's thing? So I must curtail from, gossips and judgments and yeah. Jagan, you look really confused. Are you all right? Are we?
I'm so sorry. This phone screen is so small. I'm just kind of
Okay, okay,
it's little
okay,
hard for me to read. So sorry.
okay. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so each soul follows its own line, and these lines meet, journeying together for a space. And how we were just discussing, how Pranavji was saying attachment, ego, and another cause of suffering is the grasping, right? So that aspect we can see here, that whenever we have something or someone or a situation which is working for us, we don't want things to change. And things change. Everything that I do is transitory. So that too is part of it. So when I know that I am here for some time and so is everything else and everyone else, then somehow it helps me to step back a little. So journey together for a space, then part to meet again, perhaps hereafter. Often they meet to help each other on the journey in one way or another. So, here also I feel there's such a big catch that what I think is help would feel like a lot of times does feel like a slap on my face. Right? Like if somebody is not doing all right and you say that, oh, okay, you push them forward, okay, you're on your own now, figure it out. Or anything, like mostly the help looks like punishment. It looks like that, something wrong is being done to me. And so is, our pain and suffering. We have read so much about it. At least theoretically, we know, how that pain is there for our good. So similarly, when we have relationships, when we meet, when we part, when we are playing our part, I remember, I don't know if this is an appropriate sharing for here, but once I was doing some breath work session, and in that, the healer where I was, the person, a friend of mine, he took me kind of through breath to different realms. And there I met my partner, who's still alive, but, I don't know, whatever form. And we were having a lot of conflicts at that time. And, he kind of just looked at me and laughed and he said, see what all you're making me do. And that really helped me. It's like I was carrying some negativity or some, how you say that, okay, some bitterness that, oh, this happened to me or that happened to me. But when through that it became clear that, oh, it's being done for my growth, my journey, it really helped. That how he just, in a very simple, casual, smiling way, just said, oh, see what you're making me do. So it really put things in perspective for me. So just shared because a lot of times we blame people, we blame situations, we even blame God, right? And yet we know those things are there so that we can transcend. And it's my journey. I've asked for those things. I just don't remember. There are beautiful books which talk about that how the soul chooses the experiences it wants to go through. Although with our intelligence, logical mind, we say, how can I choose pain? How can I choose diseases? How can I choose suffering? Because for me, it's all bad. But when the, aim is growth, we do choose that. Just give me 1 second. Yes. Okay. So, yeah. So as for the after death period, the soul passes into other planes of existence, staying there for a while till it reaches its place of rest, where it remains until it is ready for another terrestrial existence. So I just, shared this because a lot of times we are curious as to what would happen and stuff, but here it sounds very simple when Sri Aurobindo talks about it, that the soul passes into other planes of existence, staying there for a while till it reaches its place of rest, until it remains there till there is another terrestrial existence. This is the general law, but for the connections of embodied souls with embodied souls, that is a matter of personal evolution on which nothing general can be said, as it is intimate to the soul stories of the two and needs a personal knowledge. So this was an answer that Sri Aurobindo was giving to somebody. So this is again very specific. And one more thing, Pranavji, when you were sharing that we come back just for the karmic accounts and there's a balance and all, but we do have with us, the gurus, the bodhisattvas, who have pledged because they know that either we all get enlightened or we all get mukti or none of us do. So there are people, souls among us who come here to help us, to give us light, to show us the way out of there. So that too is a category I forgot to mention when you were sharing, and just here I was reminded of that. So in Buddhism, if you're curious, if you type the word on Google Bodhisattvas, you'll learn about that. Yeah. So that is all I can say, but I don't know that it will be of much help to her. So then again, this is personal. But the last thing is that this helps only when one enters into the consciousness in which they become not mere ideas but realities. So when these things, this is what we were talking about in the beginning, right? That these things, they help when it's not just I know it, kind of, I just have a knowledge of it. Like I have a knowledge of that this road leads to there. So it doesn't help me unless it's become me, unless it I can actually do this, practice this, believe this. So this doesn't help. So usually only when one enters into the consciousness in which they become not mere ideas, but reality, then one grieves no longer because one has entered into the truth, and the truth brings calm and peace. Then one grieves no longer. We grieve so much. But when we realize this, we grieve no longer because one has entered into the truth, and the truth brings calm and peace. So, a lot of times when somebody passes on, one wonders that what do I do? What do I do with this grief, this pain, this shock? Why is life so hard? Why are we born if only to die? So this is the answer. Seek more, ask more questions, try to find that information so that another death doesn't go waste. Just like pain, suffering, and I think we discussed it last time, it's sounding familiar to me, that death is a wake-up call. So let me wake up, let that too not get wasted. I cry so much, there's so much grief, I hold so much that how could, again, this all, but what needs to be done? That, oh, I too will die. Where will I go? What happens? What is life? What is it? If a death is not encouraging, motivating me towards these questions, then no use. And usually, the society, people around me, they don't want me to question these. This I find pretty hilarious and sad. Usually they are just like, don't go there, don't think about it, just rest, and that is needed maybe initially. But these questions must be encouraged. At least I must encourage this in me. That if I've been moved, if I've been shocked, let me not let that go. Let it mean something. Yeah. Anything? I'm so sorry I spoke so much back to back on this before we move further.
Thoroughly, like I have read actually, very accomplished souls. They had a very, kind of last time, 1 year, 2 years, or maybe few years, very difficult time, bodily at least. Now, see, if you look, Rabindranath Tagore, I think he had a very long journey. What I want to ask is the terminal year of the journey, right? In certain cases, at least literature says, when you read those people, they have kind of, very severe kind of, issues with the health. And it's a prolonged period of, even not a short period, maybe few months or maybe at least few months, or maybe few years. So how do we interpret? Because see, one would say like people have seen, like we know certain very accomplished souls in the mind. What is the? Is it because of the fact they are kind of clearing their karmic debt so they don't take birth again? Or see, this is maybe they are clearing. People say like last 1 or 2 years of journey, at least few months, people get connected. They get a wake up call. See, people say before death, people, everybody gets in fact, but some people tell, some people don't tell. But that's a period like, like my question to you is this, like, how is it connected with clearing of debts, or on how it is like, at least it is bad for the relatives. You see some very saintly person suffering on bed. How do you relate kind of So even though Ghosh also, I think he had some issue with I think read somewhere that some issue with, I think, some injury in the leg, something. So he was bedridden for a long period. So how does people who are, devotees will view it? My question is this, like, even Is it, how do we kind of, is the logical question I'm putting to you on a philosophical subject, but then there's some kind of attention. What do you say?
Yeah, Panditji, again, I am no absolutely expert on this matter, but as per Sri Aurobindo, he did have a fall. He had fractured his leg, and then just before, I mean, he recovered, and just before his death, he was in uremic shock. They said some bladder issues. When we were growing up, my father's sister, my Buaji, she used to tell a story that, earlier on, death would just come as death. The death god would come and he'll take you. And then everybody started fearing and cursing death. And then death went to God and started crying, everybody hates me, what do I do? Why do I get to be the bad person? So then God said that fine, nobody will blame you for anymore, you go. So then these diseases, the names, the categories started. So then they didn't say death took him. They said, oh, he died of a heart attack. He died of cancer. He died of a fall. So those things are irrelevant, right? This is just a story, and these are just things that we as humans need to understand. Arey, hua kya? And I find this mind numbing that when somebody passes on, especially if it's a young death or if it's a sudden death, when people call or when they come, they all know what has happened, and yet they would want to ask you, but hua kya? But hua kya? But hua kya? As if that matters. One thing is you are there, you're present, you're giving your peace, your love. But then we just want to knock at the stories again and again and again because we love stories. And even if you have come to some house where there has been death and there's lots of grief, we don't change. We just go for stories. And that's really sad. So first of all, not to get lost in the stories of, what and why, but, like you were sharing, there could be so many reasons. So personally, I feel that even, the fact that how the masters and mystics, they are able to take the diseases so lightly. There's so many examples that, masters and mystics are getting operations without anesthesia. And the doctor is asking, are you not in pain? And, one of the ones that I know personally, my father's friend, he said, हाँ, जिसको दर्द हो रहा है वो मैं नहीं हूँ. Right? Like the one who is in pain is not me. So yes, there is pain, but the one who is in pain is not me. So I feel that of course, there could be karmic accounts. There could be reasons we could go through. One of the reasons I've heard is because the masters or the realized souls or the accomplished souls, they take a lot of misery and pain and suffering of others. So this is how they release it. But the beauty is that they are not suffering. Yes, they are in pain. They are not suffering. Yes, they are in diseases. I think Ramanna Maharishi, I think he had cancer. And then they would say that he would be really suffering, and then his devotees would go and call doctors, okay, help him, help him. When the doctor would come, suddenly he would be fine. That no, nothing, I am good, I don't need anything. A doctor would go. Then as soon as the doctor would go, again something would happen. So it happened quite a few times because he wanted to go through that for some reason. So for me, I feel like, how the life of a mystic is full of guidance and light and grace. So this is another way for them to show that I'm not the body, I'm not the disease, I'm not the pain. They take it up like, a freedom fighter fight. के death ही तो है, मरना है तो है ही, मर जाएंगे. So something, I find it very motivating. In addition, of course, there could be many other reasons.
Just drawing on what Tharu said, very right. I feel that mystics, masters, or even people who are very spiritual, who have a very deep aspiration towards this path, something very deep, not only surface level, there is a lot of challenges that come. And the last challenge that they often, the ultimate challenge that then one faces is the physical illness, which is, I think that is the most challenging, where you can, retain your composure because it's so painful, bodily so painful. It's not about suffering, but it's about pain. You cannot suffer, but you can bodies, the sensations of the body still feel pain. So I see it as the ultimate test. And very rightly said, even I see repeatedly, mystics undergoing so much. Even in my family, I see, people who have devoted their lives to my aunties who were in ashram for 2 years. Both of them had cancer. But, from my understanding, I've always thought that, like, for talking about the avatars and the mystics, for them, they out of their divine compassion, they come into this human world or humanity to really make it a laboratory of realization. So whatever is there that the worst thing that human beings can face, they actually show that even that can be taken up, like even Taru said, that can be taken up on the path as a form of sadhana. So I remember one thing that really touched me was Ramakrishnan, Swami Ramakrishnan. And, he also had cancer, and he had throat cancer, which is the most painful cancers that one have. And Vivekananda was there, and his other devotees were there. And towards the end, when it got metastasized, he was not even able to eat. It was very painful. So imagine, like, you couldn't eat, and I don't think so there was any IV or something, because he didn't go to the hospital. He was just in the temple, Mahakali's temple, and it was so painful to see him suffer that Vivekananda used to tell him that, why don't you ask Kali to, cure you? Eat so that you can eat. I can't see you like this. Like, our hearts are just breaking away. Imagine like an enlightened soul like Vivekananda saying. So it must be very painful. And even he said, okay, I'll ask, And then he asks, and the answers, next day Vivekananda said, okay, then what did Kali say? He said, Kali said, why do you have to eat from your own mouth? You can eat from so many people's mouth. So I'll practice that. And that thing touched me so much, that look at that, like again, but also that even that has to be taken up to learn something, or to show, to give a lesson. Even Sri Aurobindo, if you read the book by Nirodha, his 20 years and tour, he describes elaborately about Sri Aurobindo's last days. And he's spoken that how Sri Aurobindo towards the end was continuously writing Savitri till the time he didn't go into the coma, of course. And he used to say, okay, and because Nirodha was editing. So, continuously Nirodha used to see that towards the end, and most of his, uremia and the kidney failure was actually didn't happen, but because he was so much devoted. So again, another way of, showing our highest, that what one can achieve. I've seen my own aunt. I was very small, but I've seen her. She had cancer, as a blood cancer. She was in Pondicherry ashram. And it was so painful, blood cancer, because she had last stage as well, that people used to, they give this pain medicine, what is it called? Morphine, they give injections, because it's so painful. But she rejected it, and she was so much in pain. And, my another aunt went and asked her that, is it really painful? And he says that, I will say in Hindi, because I think most of us understand Hindi, that there's so much ananda in my body that if you give me ghungru, I will start dancing like Meera. Imagine. And that's something that I've like listened and seen. So that's the possibility that physical illness can give us to practice. And I think that is why they come to the one who have reached that level. So even the divine gives only the problems to those who are able to really, take it. Otherwise, it won't come to you. And then they come to them, and they show the humanity the way of, even transcending the body consciousness, which is the most difficult, I think, to transcend. So I think that's my understanding as well.
Now, in 12 Years with Sri Aurobindo by Dr. Nirodharan, that you were talking about, it's like, I was just reading something online general the other day, and it said that how, these souls who die consciously. It's so amazing that Sri Aurobindo, it was like he was diagnosed to be in a uremic coma, he was like not responding anything, stuff. And Nirodha shares that, he had a thought that, does he even know my name? I've been with him for 12 years. Does he even know my name? And that minute, Sri Aurobindo woke up and said, Nirod, what's the time? And Nirodha said, whatever, 1:30, sir. And that's it. After a few minutes, he was gone. So if that was a coma, how did that happen? Like, and look at the, I don't know, the love, the compassion, the kindness of a master, of a mystic, of a lord, that he could not let his child feel that, oh, I didn't know you. He needed that. Probably he felt he needed that. And so when he had never taken his name before, and when his thought was, that he even know my name, he could have just said, what's the time, right? But to specifically say, Nirod, what's the time? That, I just felt like, wow, like beyond anything. Yeah. So yeah, so if I don't want to grieve, there are no quick fixes, except temporary quick fixes.
Even in Gita, like even in Gita, I've seen that. So there's so much emphasis on transcending the body consciousness, which is the most. Even Shri Krishna says it, that it is the most difficult, and yet it is very much needed on the path. It is the ultimate realization. And before showing him, chapter before chapter 10, before showing him his avatar or the Vishwaroop, that is the purpose, to actually show it, that that the flimsiness of the human body, because Arjuna also started viewing Shri Krishna only through his Saumya Roop, which is through the body. And that is why he couldn't really understand. He said, like, he's telling me such big things, but he didn't really understand, because he was so much caught up in his, in his Saumya Roop, how the divine is, like how we, in Sri Aurobindo, like even your question, that we think that how mistakes and divine, like, people who are the avatars, they still go through the suffering, because we see them into this body. We're not able to see them beyond it, right? And that is the reason Krishna also shows them. He leave the body completely, and then the Vishwaroop comes, and then he can't see it, he can't manage. Even he's appreciating. At the same time, you see Arjuna is saying, please Lord, I'm now, it's I'm scared, please come back. I want you as a friend. So that is, I think, also a way of really, like, of transcending. That's what Krishna says, that is the reason I showed you, because you have to now really transcend. And I know that my devotees are not able to see me like this, in this earth. So I always, my most available is the Saumya Roop, or the avatar that we see, Mother and Sri Aurobindo. We think that they are just this body like us, or like this. But that's the challenge. That's the ultimate, I think, challenge, even for me. Even the other day in Integral Healing, we were reading, it really resonated when we were reading that the fear of the mental and the vital is easier, but the body, on the level of body, it is so difficult to transcend the fear, because that's the, like, ultimate test. So they come to actually show us that even that's possible. But for us, of course, it's too much a far cry at the moment, at least.
Yeah, and it is said that, in the after Sri Aurobindo's passing, especially, Mother had been specifically working on the body, the transformation of the cells. And the other day, I'm these days going to the Delhi ashram, working under Tara Didi. And Tara Didi had taken a lot of pictures, like she personally was a photographer. And I happened to chance upon the pictures, the whole era of pictures that she had taken of Mother in her Mahasamadhi. And it feels that there is nothing left, like as if the whole thing has been, absolutely totally used, and the energy has been sucked out, like giving everything towards the transformation. And she gave us the mantra, right? Om Namo Bhagavate. She says that's the mantra that the body responds to, the cells respond to. And this is the mantra she felt that they responded to immediately for the transformation from us to the divine, right? May the divine manifest in me. Om Namo Bhagavate. So, yeah, I don't know why I shared that, but yeah.
Glad you shared that line.
Okay. Okay, so we will see. There's a short video I found from OSHO. I mean, I thought it was interesting. So we'll just see it and see if we resonate or if there are any questions. If you can't hear the sound, do unmute and let me know.
The whole life is yours. Love it. To the fullest. That's the only way to get ready for death. Then you can live death to its fullest. And it is one of the most beautiful experiences. There is nothing comparable to the death experience in life except deep meditation. So those who know meditation, they know something of death. That's the only way to know before dying. If I am saying there is nothing more significant experience in life than death, I am saying not because I have died and come back to tell you, but because I know in meditation you move into the same space as death. Because in meditation you are no more your physiology, no more your biology, no more your chemistry, no more your psychology. All those are left far away. You come to your innermost center where there is only pure awareness. That pure awareness will be with you when you will die, because that cannot be taken away. All these things can be taken away, which we take away with our own hands in meditation. So meditation is an experience of death in life. And it is so beautiful, so indescribably beautiful, that only one thing can be said about death. It must be multiplied by millions. The experience of meditation multiplied by millions is the experience of death. And when you pass, you simply leave your form back. You are absolutely intact. And for the first time out of the prison of the physiology, biology, psychology, all the walls are broken and you are free. For the first time you can open your wings into the existential.
You know, a lot of us, a lot of times this thought comes, one fears, one wonders. So I thought this was an interesting take, that if I want to know, then I must, start meditating, must put myself in there. And I'd shared last time too that in Buddhism, there are so many practices, so many meditations that walk us through the process. And it's pretty amazing. So, not this time, I didn't pull any, and there's a lot of other sharing. Maybe next time. And before we end this topic, we will be taking up some meditations. Maybe we resonate with them. And they say it just prepares us, it just helps us because, we fear something which is unknown. We never fear the known. Or, right, like JK says that we fear the known, not the unknown. So just from where you are standing. But yeah, it's good to know, it's good to experience that as well. So if there are any comments or questions on what we just heard, we can take them up before we move forward. Okay, so it was a very simple one. And so there's another video, which there's a story of Nachiketa. I'm sure we must all have heard the name. And there is some series called Upanishad Ganga, which was created by Chinmay Mission. Beautiful series of, stories of Upanishads. And from that, I pulled up the story of Nachiketa when he's asking Yama, what is death? So I thought it would be helpful for us to see it. So I'm playing it. And if there's any issue with the sound, do let me know.
कुछ लोग कहते हैं कि वे हैं और कुछ लोग
1 second, I'm sorry.
कहते हैं कि वे नहीं हैं। मरे हुए मनुष्यों के संबंध में कुछ लोग कहते हैं कि वे हैं और कुछ लोग कहते हैं कि वे नहीं हैं। मैं उस सत्य को जानना चाहता हूँ।
नचिकेता, देवताओं के लिए भी वह रहस्य दुर्लभ है।
I think the video for me is stuck. I don't know for other people.
हे मृत्यु, मैं उस रहस्य
Yeah, it's stuck for me. Only the audio is.
Okay, you can't see the video you're saying?
It's breaking, like
Okay, I'll just
frame by
restart
frame.
it.
Yeah.
I'll restart
Sure.
it. There will be some issue at my end with the net. I did get that message. So I'll just tell me if it's better.
अब तीसरा वर मांग लो।
मरे हुए मनुष्यों के संबंध में कुछ लोग कहते हैं कि वे हैं और कुछ लोग कहते हैं कि वे नहीं हैं। मैं उस सत्य को जानना चाहता हूँ।
नचिकेता, देवताओं के लिए भी वह रहस्य दुर्लभ है। तुम कोई दूसरा वर मांग लो।
हे मृत्यु, मैं उस रहस्य को जानना चाहता हूँ जिसे न जानने के कारण मेरे निष्प्रिय और तपस्वी पिता भी मोह के बंधन न काट सके। क्या है जीवन की उपासना का वह रहस्य जिसे मनीषी आत्मविद्या कहते हैं?
हे नचिकेता, तुम 100 वर्ष की आयु वाले पुत्र पौत्र मांग लो। पशुधन, हाथी, घोड़े, सुवर्ण, रत्न मांग लो। मर्त्य लोक में जो कामनाएं दुर्लभ हैं, वह मांग लो। ये स्त्रियां, ये रथ, ये वाद्य मांग लो। ऐसी स्त्रियां जो मनुष्यों को प्राप्त होने योग्य नहीं, उनसे अपनी परिचर्या करवा लो, पर मृत्यु के संबंध में प्रश्न मत पूछो।
हे अंतक, ये सुख, ये भोग कल रहेंगे या नहीं, इसका भरोसा नहीं है। भोग से इंद्रियों का तेज कम होता है, इसलिए आपके ये घोड़े, ये नाच, ये गान आप अपने पास ही रहने दें। नवित्तेन तर्पणियों मनुष्य के धन की प्यास कभी बुझने वाली नहीं, इसलिए मुझे तो आप वही ज्ञान दें जिसे पाकर मनुष्य अमर हो जाता है।
हे नचिकेता, जीवन के 2 पथ हैं, एक श्रेय का और दूसरा प्रेय का। प्रेय का मार्ग भौतिकता का, भोग का है। योग का, श्रेय का मार्ग आध्यात्मिकता है। दोनों ही मनुष्य के सामने भिन्न भिन्न रूपों में आते हैं। बुद्धिमान प्रेय की अपेक्षा श्रेय को चुनता है। निर्बुद्ध अपने लिए प्रेय का मार्ग स्वीकार करता है। भोग का मार्ग अविद्या का, अज्ञान का मार्ग है। अध्यात्म का मार्ग विद्या का, ज्ञान का मार्ग है। प्रेय के मार्ग को चुनने वाला सुख को ही सत्य मान बैठता है। श्रेय के मार्ग को चुनने वाला आत्मा को ही सत्य मानता है। प्रेय का मार्ग इंद्रियों की ओर ले जाता है, श्रेय का मार्ग इंद्रियों से परे ले जाता है। हे नचिकेता, आत्मा के सत्य को तर्क से नहीं जाना जाता। श्रोत्रिय और ब्रह्मनिष्ठ गुरु के द्वारा दिए गए ज्ञान से ही आत्मा का सत्य जाना जा सकता है।
नचिकेता जैसा प्रश्न पूछने वाला सत्याग्रही पाकर यम प्रसन्न थे, और नचिकेता यम जैसा गुरु पा जिज्ञासा शांत करने का अवसर नहीं चूक रहा था।
हे नचिकेता, इस शरीर को तुम रथ और आत्मा को रथी जानो, बुद्धि को सारथी और मन को लगाम जानो। इंद्रियां रथ के घोड़े हैं और विषय चरागाह। जो चंचल मन का है, जिसने मन की लगाम नहीं खींच रखी, इंद्रियां उसके वश में नहीं रहती। ठीक वैसे ही जैसे दुष्ट घोड़े सारथी के, जो निश्चल मन का है, जिसने मन की लगाम खींच रखी है, इंद्रियां उसके वश में रहती हैं, जैसे उत्तम घोड़े सारथी के। विवेक जिसका सारथी है, जिसने मन रूपी लगाम खींच रखी है, वही मनुष्य अपने गंतव्य तक पहुंचता है। हे नचिकेता, इंद्रियों से इंद्रियों के विषय श्रेष्ठ हैं, विषय से मन, मन से बुद्धि और बुद्धि से आत्मा श्रेष्ठ है। जो इस आत्मा को जान लेता है, वह मृत्यु से परे चला जाता है।
Yeah, very engrossing and yet really fast, so unable to fully. I mean, I felt that the series was very fast, like it should have more pauses. So I'll share this on the group in case you want to hear it again. But I love the concept of Shray and pray that, how we pray that, right? That in most of our prayers, like say Astoma Sadgamaya, Tamsoma Jyotirgamaya, right? Like we say that, I don't want intelligence, I want wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom is something that helps us see beyond the veils, right? The veils of ignorance. So Shray is something which is good for me, truly good for me. Pray is something that is pleasurable to me. And because of the instant gratifications of the pleasures, if I go to a high-end restaurant and I've ordered a cappuccino and I'm sitting there and sipping on it, it feels I'm something bigger than what I usually feel sitting drinking chai at home. Do I see that? Do I notice that change in me, right? Because when I look at somebody having that cup of cappuccino, something in me says, yeah, this looks good. I also want some. How I'm choosing these subtle movements. This is what, one of the things that he was saying, that the wise, and I remember, Acharya Ji also used to say that, Acharya Prashant, a lot of times he used to hammer that. कि उसको चुनो जो तुम्हारे हित में है, हित जो तुम्हारे लिए अच्छा है, और उसको मत चुनो जो अच्छा लग रहा है, right? Now who's giving you instant gratifications, pleasures, which are all transitory, and that is the problem, right? We keep getting, we keep running, we keep gaining, we keep grasping, and yet we feel like a beggar, because none of the things that I'm running towards have the capacity for me to make me feel less of a lack. So let me look at it if possible. Let me be more open to it so that I can, be a bit more aware of what's happening, how Osho was sharing, right? That awareness. I am that awareness, and in the meditative state, just as in the state of death, I am that awareness. So there's something from Sri Aurobindo also on this I had wanted to share, and even what we had shared I'd shared on the groups in the morning. I felt it would resonate with that. Just give me 1 second. The quote from Nisargadatta, I don't know how you pronounce it, his name. Just give me a second. Yeah, so the quote was this. Nisargadatta, Nandini or Jagan or whoever knows, they can pronounce it, please. But
Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj.
yeah, thank you, Jagan. So you may die 100 deaths without a break in the mental turmoil, or you may keep your body and die only in the mind. The death of the mind is the birth of wisdom. Just, that kind of brings us to the topic of dying to oneself, and it's already 9. We can take it up next time. The topic of what does it mean to die to oneself, because we have to do that, because what we are, we cannot move much forward with that. We have to constantly shed ourselves, shed our past. Yeah. Anything by anybody on what we heard, read, or anything that's coming to their mind?
I was just thinking when like a lot of I've reflected on this, that dying to be me, this title by Anita Murjani, or Ramdas says, even Jiddu Krishnamurti says that dying before you die is the real life. That's how you start living. So I've always thought that what does it mean in practical terms? Sometimes how can you really translate it? That how can I really die before in life? Of course, it means death of the ego, right? That Pranavji also talking, death of this I, which brings so much suffering, and that's the time when you start living, because your attachment falls away. There is less, or there is no sense of ownership and all of that. But it's a journey. It will happen eventually. But how can that be translated in all the things? I think I've shared it as well before. I don't know, here or somewhere, but is Rupert Spira says that the best way to challenge the ego is to keep expanding your comfort zones or expanding your consciousness. So that's how ego doesn't want expansion. It fears it. It wants to be limited. It wants to be a separate self. But if you really want to die to your ego, make sure that you expand it. Like go to that, join a martial art course, for example, or like learn French or any language that you think, how would I do? Or, like do a bungee jumping where you say that, oh, I cannot do. If you're afraid of heights, something, if you're afraid of water, learn swimming. And that was so beautiful, that this is how you really die to these fears that we have. Or, if you want to do something and you're still restricted, what will this person think? Or what will this person think? You actually do it, because, that's the only life you've got. Like I often tell myself, like I always, at least 20 times in a day, I remind myself, I don't know if I live tomorrow. I better do it today. I have no guarantee I'll be there tomorrow. Maybe I'll just drop it off. So and I ask myself, and how did my day go? Am I satisfied? Am I ready to go tomorrow? Am I ready to, if no, then I need to make sure that, and I've made it this is the thing that, I always like reflect, talking with the mother, like before sleeping. And it's really helped actually, because you are always reflecting on what you have done and what's so much to do. So I think in that sense, when you talked about it, it kind of reminded me of this practice of always being aware of this, that tomorrow I might die. So I better expand myself.
Actually, it's sad that we need these reminders, but it's practical that we actually do. I mean, it's a fact that we do, that we have to constantly remind. And I think this is also the question, right? That I don't know who had asked Yudhishthir. I might have said that before. I really like it. That how he had asked Yudhishthir that what he finds the most surprising in the world. And Yudhishthir had said that the fact that people see others dying every day but they think they will not die. And they live as if they have to live forever, and to no consciousness, no thing about it might end anytime. Yeah, it's very amazing how we do that. Yeah.
Also, even Krishna also says in chapter 2, to Arjuna that if they're already dead, the Kauravas are already dead. It doesn't matter if you kill it or I'll kill it, because if you will not kill, then I will kill, because I have given you the honor of living to the Kshatriya, to the Dharma, to preserve the Sanatan Dharma. But if you're not willing and if you want to go take sannyasa, I'll kill them because they're already dead. So that was also very important, that if you're living only for your ego and desire, you're not living, you're dead, actually dead. So we need to go to ask ourselves, are we alive? Are we dead people?
Yeah. There's this very beautiful song. It was, I don't know, I think written during maybe freedom fighting, I'm not sure. हो गई है पीर पर्वत सी पिघलनी चाहिए, इस हिमालय से कोई गंगा निकलनी चाहिए. उसमें भी there was this beautiful stanza what you were sharing, there's something about के हाथ लहराते हुए हर लाश चलनी चाहिए, because we live as dead, right? We live as if we are dead, totally patterns, habits, comfort zones. This is my life, this is my schedule, this should not get troubled. किसी का routine break मत कर दो. It's like we are so just this till, and then they have this schedules with this and this, and then what are they waiting for? Just time pass kar rahe hain towards what? That nobody says, right? But yeah, I mean, it's so beautiful that, and he's urging and motivating that हाथ लहराते हुए हर लाश चलनी चाहिए, कि वो भी प्रोटेस्ट कर रही है कि नहीं नहीं मुझे इस पे ऊपर उठना है. We'll take it up someday. It's very beautiful, very beautiful. We'll take it up in Harmony Circle someday.
Can you share that song, Taru, on the group, please? I have not heard it.
अच्छा, मैं गा देती हूँ. Yeah, I'm just
Please.
kidding. Yeah, but yeah, it's really beautiful that हो
It's,
गई
yeah,
है पीर पर्वत सी पिघलनी चाहिए. It's so, it's reached its maximum that now it must, come out. तो इस हिमालय से कोई गंगा निकलनी चाहिए. सिर्फ yeah, I remembered it fully somehow. I don't know. Yeah. आज ये दीवार पर्दों की तरह हिलने लगी. आज ये दीवार पर्दों की तरह हिलने लगी. शर्त लेकिन थी कि ये सूरत बदलनी चाहिए. It's like just the superficial thing, but yeah, I'll share it. It's very beautiful. We can all hear it in our own thing, and we can take it up for reflection someday. So, if there are any last comments, we can take them up. And they're very short. I know we've seen so many videos today, but there was something very beautiful I found. We'll end with that, and maybe next time we'll start with that if there's any reflection. Anything before I show the last video? Okay.
Did you tackle that trouble that came your way with a resolute heart and cheerful? Or hide your face from the light of day with a craven soul and fearful? Oh, a trouble's a ton, or a trouble's an ounce. Or a trouble is what you make it. And it isn't the fact that you're hurt that counts, but only how did you take it? You are beaten to earth? Well,
What's that? Come up with a smiling face. It's nothing against you to fall down flat. But to lie there, that's disgrace. The hotter you're thrown, why the higher you bounce. Be proud of your blackened eye. It isn't the fact that you're licked that counts. It's how did you fight and why. And though you be done to the death, what then? If you battled the best you could, if you played your part in the world of men, why, a critic will call it good. Death comes with a crawl, or comes with a bounce. And whether he's slow or spry, it isn't the fact that you're dead that counts, but only how did you die?
Yeah, it was very meditative for me to hear this, and I think it really, really hits the nail on the head because, a lot of times, just like so many other distractions, this too becomes a distraction, right? Like even death can become a distraction, and lot of times it's about how you're living, right? And it's not about death. And somebody's death can also shake you. That am I living the way I want to, the life that I want to, like Nandini was sharing. So how he says that it's not about, what or why or the troubles, how big, how small, but how you take them, how I take them. That's what makes me, grow. That what shows that I'm an evolved soul and I want more progress and growth. So ending the session here, we'll start with this poem next time, and praying and aspiring that may I live truly while I'm alive, supposedly alive. May I have the grace, the blessings to know what being alive means, and may I not just waste my life in the superfluous, the superficial, the temporary, the instant gratifications. May I be able to reach for the highest. May I fulfill the reason for which I am born. There is a reason. So praying for grace, praying for wisdom, and sharing the merit, if any, with all beings. Not everybody can listen to Dharma. Not everybody has the courage to talk about topics like death, but I do. So let me do it for everyone, so that at least I can be one drop of poison less, one drop of fear less in this ocean of poison, fear, or whatever we want to call it. So thank you so much for joining in, and yeah, so next time too, we'll be taking the same topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Pranabji. Thank you, Nandini.
Thank you.